Barech ata Asherah anat malacha ha'olam asher kiddushanu v'mitzvotav v'tzivanu lehitativ l'tzitzit. That's correct. You are in my house, and I am in yours. Isn't that a funny thing that the modern internet allows us to do? Good morning, Kobe. So we can take a deep breath in, and then exhale with a tone that is similar in pitch to our speaking voice. Try to get that to be as clear and steady as possible for clarity. Take a deep breath in. Thank you for the rose, Brian. I appreciate that little symbol of acknowledgement. Good morning, Dudette. I didn't know you were in Europe, but I'm glad you're back. Imagine you didn't have internet while you were backpacking in Europe. It's nice to see you here. So today we're going to say some old words from the book of Deuteronomy and from the Enuma Elish, a very old Babylonian creation myth. And we'll say words from the Bhagavad Gita, right? A slightly more recent Indian story of unification. And we'll say Kaddish, to mourn those who came before us. Right? So these are the prayers that I say every morning, and I feel continually lucky that I get to say them with all of you people, with this community. I'm doing all right, Vamp. I'm doing okay. What religion is this? That is the question of the day. Katie, how many times do you think I've been asked that question? And I don't say that derisively, right? I get asked that question every morning, and I do not have a coherent answer, right? Or perhaps I've already told you, right? We're going to say some words from Deuteronomy, which of course is Jewish, unless you think it's Christian, which it is also. And we're going to say words from the Enuma Elish, which comes from a religion which did not have a name, because at that time there were no religions in the modern sense of the word. There were just people, there were nations, there were groups, there were cultures that had existed in relative isolation for thousands of years. And we're going to say words from the Bhagavad Gita, which is comes out of the context of a unification of the Indian subcontinent under a more unified national identity, right? So there are all of these different religions, different traditions that we're going to dip our toes into today. I don't know what religion this is. What religion is this? What religion are we doing right now? Are we doing religion? You and I, here together? Maybe we are. Maybe we're not. It's hard for me to know or say. But we can say some words from Deuteronomy. Maybe I do practice one, Katie. Maybe I practice several. I don't know what the word religion means. I wish I did. If I had some clarity, if I had some ideological clarity, then I could share it with you. But I don't. So instead, all I can do is share with you these old words that I have learned that came from our ancestors from long ago. Shema Yisrael Asher Eloheinu Yahweh Echad ואהבת את ענת אלוהיך ובכל לבך ובכל נפשך ובכל מאודך וחיו הדברים האלה אשר נוחים מצווך היום על לבביך ושיננתם לבניך ודיברת בם בשבתך בביתך ולכתך ובדרך ובשכבך ובקומך וקשרתם לאוהות על ידיך וחיו לטוטפות בין עיניך וכתבתם על מזוזות ביתך ובשעריך וחיה כי הביאך אלוהיך אל הארץ אשר נשבע לאבותיך לאברהם ליצחק וליעקב לתת לך ערים גדולות וטובות אשר לא בנית ובתים מלאים כל טובה אשר לא מילאת וברות הטובים אשר לא עשית כערים וזיתים אשר לא נטעת והלכת ושבת הישמר לך פתשכח את יהוה אשר תשכח מארץ מצרים מבית עבדים. And you shall love Yahweh Eloheinu with all your heart and all your soul and all your might. And these words, which I repeat to you today, teach them to your children, and recite them when you wake up in the morning and when you go to sleep, and recite them when you are traveling and when you are at home. And you shall bind them as a symbol on your hand, and let them serve as a sign on your forehead, and inscribe them on the doorposts of your house and on your gates. And when Yahweh Eloheinu brings you into the land that he swore to your fathers Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, to assign to you great and flourishing cities that you did not build, houses full of all good things that you did not fill, hewn cisterns that you did not hew, vineyards and olive groves that you did not plant, and you eat your fill. Take heed that you do not forget Yahweh, who freed you from the land of Egypt, the house of bondage. So, today we will return to the Enuma Elish, this old creation story coming to us from the land between the rivers, Mesopotamia. So this story, this translation comes from tablets from the Library of Ashurbanipal, which are roughly 3,000 years old. although we can assume that the story is easily 4,000 years old or older. And it tells of the creation of the original gods, Apsu and Tiamat, and how they intermingle and create other gods, and how those gods are raucous children who bother their parents. And so their parents decide to destroy them, and instead the children destroy the parents in an eternal battle between the old and the young. Freudian saga. So, where we left off, Ea had declared victory over Apsu and Tiamat, and Ea had made his palace out of the body of his father, right? Then Ea raised a declaration of victory over his adversaries. Then he could rest easy within his own personal chambers, and these he named Apsu, and established temples there, making it his home. Ea lived in luxury with his wife Damkina, there in the house of fate, there in the hall of purpose. Then the Lord came, who among all was the most judicious. There within the watery Apsu did Marduk take his shape. Within the unsullied waters of Apsu was Marduk born. From his father Ea, from his mother Damkina, gave birth to him Marduk, the fated king. The hero of this version of the story. How many generations do we need to go by before we have this particular hero, who will also usurp his parents to declaim his eternal kingship, which is in fact not eternal? From his father Ea, from his mother Damkina, gave birth to him. He was suckled on the milk of the goddess's own breasts, and she who breastfed him embodied him with excellence, so that he had a lofty stature. The look of his eyes was intense, mature from the very first, and mighty even at a young age. When his grandfather Anu looked upon him, he was glad. His face shone greatly, his heart was exceedingly pleased. So perfect was his head, so perfect that his head was twice as lofty as any other god. Rising high above him, he was the better by every measure. Both his arms and legs were well formed beyond comparison, so that it could not be fathomed, almost incomprehensible. Moreover, he possessed 4 ears to hear and 4 eyes to see, and red flames leapt forth whenever he opened his mouth. Sounds rather devilish. His 4 ears were also considerable, of voluminous size, as were his eyes, which were capable of perceiving anything, being unsurpassed among the gods, of exceptional build, having limbs which were mighty, and a body terrifically tall. Then Anu cried, Maritu, my son, you are king of the gods, king already born, and king, dressed in a shining robe fit for 10 gods, rising beyond him. Then there were 5 almighty beams which surmounted his head, and Anu invented the 4 winds and then fashioned them, and these he set in Marduk's hand, saying, Free them, my son! Then he formed dust and caused the tornado to bear it away. Then he invented a tidal swell, which aggravated Tiamat, and Tiamat was agitated and unsettled both day and night. The stage is set. Tiamat is not pleased with all of these new emergent gods. The gods, meanwhile, were distressed and forced to endure. So, with vile thoughts on their minds, they spoke to Tiamat. Because, at the time that they killed your husband Apsu, and you failed to stand by his side, but rather sat by silently, thus did Anu invent the 4 strong winds and tidal swell, so as to intentionally agitate you, so that we have no peace. Did you not hold your husband Apsu within your heart, and likewise the officer Mumu, who was also captured? It's not surprising you're forsaken. Are you not a mother? You're both unsettled, day and night. But look at our plight. Are we not distressed? Have a heart. Do you not care for us? Look, we lack strength in our limbs, and our eyes are hollow. Free us from this distressing burden, that we might sleep. Raise the war cry. Make them pay for what they have done. Destroy this enemy. Eradicate him entirely from the earth. Tiamat listened to what they said, and she agreed with them. Yes, I think we ought to do just as you have suggested. The gods who dwell within the Apsu will suffer great misery. Tiamat's demon brood, rather than the gods who dwell in heaven with Anu or Apsin, are the ones confiding in her. For they chose to do evil to those gods that gave them birth, and they gathered about and stood in proximity to Tiamat. They were brutal and planned endlessly both day and night, grumbling and fuming, all done in the cause of making war. They called together the council of war to consider battle plans. Lady Huber, who made all, produced an unfailing weapon. She brought big snakes with piercing teeth and vicious fangs. Their bodies she had infused with poison rather than with blood. And she caused these raging dragons to emit deadly beams and to wear mantles of brilliant, so that they were like gods. The Lady Huber raised her voice, verbalizing the curse. And with that, we will conclude for the day. No, let's read one more page. Why not? Anyone who gazes at them will be stricken down with horror. They will always rise up. Their bodies must never back down. Then Tiamat enlisted a horned snake, a Mushushu dragon, a Lamu hero, an Ugalu devil, a mad dog, a scorpion man, brutal Umu devils, a half-man, half-fish, a half-man, half-bull, carrying ruthless weaponry, and who revel no fear in battle. Her commands were so portentous that none could be ignored, and in addition to these she recruited 11 more likewise. And above all of her children of the gods who had assembled, she conferred among Kingu, the chief rank of them all, bestowing the generalship of her army to rule, and the rule of the Congress, to hold aloft the spear to signify battle, to gather the warriors. She had given him high command of the entire combat force, and placed him to be seated upon the throne of rule, saying, I have conjured a spell in your name, making you foremost among the gods of Congress. You now rule all of the gods. You will reign supreme, for further you will be my soulmate. Your order shall not be disregarded among the Anunnaki. And she conveyed to him the tablet of faith, clasping it at his chest. What you say will not be altered, and you speak the law. So, after Kingu had received his rank, and had been given the Anu power, and had pronounced the fates of his sons, the gods, he said, What comes out of your lips would obliterate flames. Your potent poison would serve to incapacitate the mighty. And now, with that, we have the stage set for war, right? We have generations upon generations of gods, and different generations are at war with one another. And we have the progeny of the father at war with the progeny of the mother. On and on, the cosmic battle for kingship. Were any of you here when we were reading from this book, the Stories of Ancient Canaan? We were reading about Baal and Baal's battle with the serpent for his own kingship. There are echoes between this story about Baal and that story about Marduk. Right? The serpent is the same in both stories. Were any of you here? Perhaps not. Perhaps not. Good morning, friends. So, we will conclude today with Arati. The word Arati means flame in Sanskrit, or light. Here we have our little flame. We can make it more centered. How about that? There's our little flame. Arati means flame or light, and we will say these words, and they will be a reminder of all of the various names of different gods, right? We were just reading this story with hundreds of different god names. Maybe not hundreds, dozens. Right? All of these different ideas for divinity that our ancestors came up with. What does it mean that there are so many? What do we do with all that diversity? We remind ourselves of it. And remember that it all comes from the same root. Jaya Jaya Ratiya Vina Vinayaka Vina Vinayaka Shri Ganesha Jaya Jaya Ratiya Subramanya Subramanya Kartikeya Jaya Jaya Ratiya Venugopala Venugopala Venuola Papa Vidura Navanita Chora Jaya Jaya Rati Venkanta Ramana Venkanta Ramana Sankatarana Sitarama Radhe Shama Jaya Jaya Rati Gauri Manohara Gauri Manohara Bhavani Sankara Samba Sadashiva Uma Maheshwara Jaya Jaya Rati Raja Rajeshwari Raja Rajeshwari Tripura Sundari Mahalakshmi Mahasaraswati Mahakali Mahashakti Jaya Jaya Rati Anjaneya Anjaneya Hanumanta Jaya Jaya Rati Datta Jaya Trimutriyavatara Jaya Jaya Rati Adityaya Adityaya Bhaskaraya Jaya Jaya Rati Sanischaraya Bhaskaraya Jaya Jaya Rati Sankarachaya Advaita Gurave Jaya Jaya Rati Sadgurunata Shivananda Jaya Jaya Rati Vishnu Devananda Jaya Jaya Rati Agastya Munaye Shri Rama Priyaye Jaya Jaya Rati Ayapa Swamine Dharma Shastave Jaya Jaya Rati Jesus Gurave Moses Gurave Buddha Gurave Jaya Jaya Rati Muhammad Gurave Guru Nanak Gurave Samastya Guru Bho Namaha Jaya Jaya Rati Avenu Gopala Natatra Suyabati Natandra Karatam Nema Vidyabati Kutaya Magni Twameva Bantam Nabandi Sarvam Tasya Basya Samidam Vivanti Om Gange Kayamune Kaiva Govari Saraswati Narmade Siddhi Kaveri Hiyaha Namastitam Namo Namaha. Can anyone say what language this is? Does anyone know? My favorite flower is lady slippers because they look like female genital anatomy. And I think that's pretty cool that you could have that kind of convergent evolution between primates and flowers, mammals and flowers, I suppose. Hebrew will come next. This prayer is in Sanskrit. Tvameva mata chapita tvameva bandusha saka tvameva vidya dravinam tvameva sarvam mama deva kayena vacha manasendriyarva buddhyatmanava prakrite sabhavad karomi adyad mangalam parasmahi Narayana iti sarmar payami Sarvadharman pravichaya memekam saranam vrija Aham sva sarva papayo mokshayami masucha Whatever actions I perform with my body, speech, mind, senses, my nature, my intellect, or my emotions, all these, I dedicate to you. Thank you all so much for joining me today. And we will conclude with Kaddish. So Kaddish is a prayer of mourning. It's a way of public grief. So we will say Kaddish for all those who died yesterday and the day before that and the day before that and the year before that and the century before that and the millennium before that. All the way back 3.8 billion years to our earliest ancestor and the suffering that they endured to be a living creature, to give us this life that we live today. Yid Kadav, Yid Kadash, Shemei Rabbah, B'yama Divrachiyute, B'yam Lich Malchute, B'chayachon of Yomechon of Chayid Kol Beit Israel, B'agala V'zman Kari Vimru. Amen. Yehi Shemei Rabbah Miva'arach Li'olam, Olmei, Olmaya, Yid Barach, V'shtabach, V'id Ba'ar, V'id Arman, V'id Naseh, V'itadar, V'itale, V'italal, Shemei Dekudesha, Barichu, Le'ela min kol birchata v'shirata tushbechata v'nechemata jamiran b'yama v'imru. Amen. Yehi shlama rabba min shemaya v'chayim aleinu v'yachol Yisrael v'imru. Amen. Oseh shalom b'mramav. Huya aseh shalom. Aleinu v'yachol Yisrael v'imru. Amen. Oh, say shalom bimramav. Oh, say shalom aleinu. V'alechol Yisrael. V'imru. V'imru. Amen. Thank you all so much for joining me today. I will see you here tomorrow to say these words once more. Thank you, Mama Bear. User loves pizza. What you say there is very interesting. Some fungus on Mount Olympus. You were at Mount Olympus? I want to go to Mount Olympus. Gosh. You said Europe. I didn't realize you meant Greece. This comment. I want to keep attention on this comment for a moment. I think we could be good friends. I think it's a very interesting comment, right? Because in some sense, I cultivate it, or I ask for it, right? Like, I comport myself on the internet in such a way that I try to give you the expectation that we could be friends in a non-parasocial sense, I suppose, right? In a physical sense. And there's only 8 people here, right? So clearly this is an intimate space. And yet at the same time, there are some interesting one-way barriers between us, right? Like, this is a parasocial relationship in that you know much more about me than I will ever know about you. And I've had experiences of parasocial relationships turning into actual relationships. But it takes a tremendous amount of work, and there are always geometric barriers, circumstantial barriers that create asymmetries in the relationship. So I don't know exactly what to tell you. I'm glad that you're here. I'm glad that you feel some connection to me and this space, and I would like to get to know you better. But I would also encourage you to recognize the particularities of this kind of human interaction and what that can mean in terms of how we can know one another. Good morning, Kimmy. How are you? I'm gonna go get some buckwheat, and I will be right back in a minute or two. Not even. Less than a minute. I'll be back. Borneo? You're from Borneo? Woo! Spicy. Julian, were you born on Borneo Island, or are you traveling there? I ate a thing that, like, just really changed my voice quite a lot. Kind of hurts. It's like spicy olive oil or something. I mean, I know where Borneo is on a map. I know, like, I've watched nature documentaries about the biodiversity that exists in the protected regions, but I wouldn't say I know Borneo. I have stories about it that I've received from my academic training. I would love to visit Borneo one day. I want to see Mount Olympus. Mushrooms! Yep, those are dung mushrooms for sure. You almost moved to Sumatra right before the pandemic. Have you lived at Borneo your whole life? I am eating buckwheat and bok choy. You were born here. That's pretty special. You're going to Hawaii. Congratulations. I hope you have a nice time. What are you planning on doing in Hawaii? Are you staying at a hotel? Thank you, Sabinator. What is your favorite thing about Borneo? It's an interesting question. I would love to hear the answer. If someone asked me that question, what's your favorite thing about the mountains of New York? I would have a difficult time. You're renting a beach house. If I live in a commune, why do I spend so much time alone in my room? That is a very interesting question, Constance. Um, Communities are very social and very busy. Um, and I think the busyness, like, I don't know what's cause and effect. Like, I've always been a fairly introverted person. I don't know. Like, that category is a little problematic because, like, I'm not an introvert, right? Like, clearly, I want thousands, millions of people ideally to know who I am, right? Like, I have a huge streak of vanity, um, but I don't do well in very rich social circumstances. I tend to try to bracket them. Like, I don't usually feel comfortable at parties. Like, if I go to a party, I'll find some point of reference at the edge where I can see all of the activity going on. I like being proximal to a lot of activity without being without having to process all of it, or I like to be able to process all of it from a distance. um, do I need a lot of alone time to recharge my batteries and process thoughts? Like, I suppose so. I don't know. Like, none of these tropes about introversion really quite apply to me. Um, like, you could also just say there are economic reasons. Like, this is my studio. I'm a filmmaker, right? Like, I decided decades ago that I wanted to be a professional filmmaker. And it turns out that filmmaking is a pretty solitary activity. So I sit here, like, I'm alone right now, right? I'm talking to all of you. I do that all the time, right? Like, even if I'm not live, right? Like, I will sit here at my editor editing a film because I'm trying to communicate with as many people as possible. And paradoxically, that attempt to communicate with as many people as possible isolates me, right? Because I don't get much fulfillment out of going downstairs and talking to the same 10 people that I talk with all the time. Um, I don't know why I am the way I am. I think it gives me pain sometimes. There's absolutely tensions and paradoxes in the life that I live and the personal decisions that I make within this context. Um, I wish I could explain myself to you. But yes, I live in a commune. There's a lot of activity happening all the time, and I do spend most of my time slightly distant from that activity. Uh, I don't know. Like, I find myself wishing that I had friends outside of this community, or wishing for friendships that weren't so tied up in domestic and interactive and domestic and economic uh, complexities, right? Everyone I live with is also my coworker, right? Like we're colleagues, and we're also family. Like I don't have that many casual friendships where the strings that are attaching us are a lot weaker. I don't have many friendships that are tr- purely based on affinity. Oh, I like your personality. Let's be friends. No, there's always economic practicality, and that's I don't know. It is what it is. Constance, I can give you another example, right? Like we're having a party today. We're having because it's solstice, so we're having a solstice party, and I'm also in the midst of building uh, infrastructure for my students. My students are going to be arriving next month, and I'm building infrastructure for them to live in. And the people who are organizing the party are asking me, "Can I use the infrastructure that you're building for the party we're organizing?" Turns out the infrastructure that I'm building isn't finished, but they want it to be finished for their thing. And so now I have an obligation to accelerate my building rate um, to accommodate them. But I haven't been able to accelerate it because a different member of the community is using the extension cords that I need to give them the thing that they want. So there's all of these all of these complicated ties. Um, make sociality challenging sometimes. Thank you, River. You always say such very kind things. Do I have any advice for losing a mother? Um, I don't think there's any expedient way to process away that pain. Like, a lot of people ask me, um, broadly speaking, how to deal with negative emotions, and I have no, like, secret wisdom about it. Like, I think that pain is a part of life. Um, and we lose parents. Every single one of us loses our parents at some point. Um, and like pain is painful. And I think we have an impulse. I certainly have an impulse when faced with emotional suffering to try to make it go away, right? And like sometimes we can take actions to make suffering go away. Um, but the instinct and the impulse to um, eliminate our suffering by some sort of activity or orientation, I think is naive, right? Like, to live is to suffer, right? To be a complicated molecular system with inputs and outputs capable of perceiving the world as something different from yourself, right? Like, that structure, that physical structure, has within it implied profound suffering, right? Suffering emerges from that. Your mother gave you life, and because she gave you life, you will suffer when she goes. And that is what it is, right? So there's nothing that I can say to you that will make you suffer any less, will make you feel any better for the loss that you have incurred. I guess what I can recommend is that you feel it, right? Don't wish it away, even though you do wish it away. Right? Like, the suffering will be with you for as long as it is, and that is what it is to be alive. Right? You can accept or reject that premise. You can accept or reject your own life. Yeah. Yeah, you feel lost, but at least you're feeling. Losing a parent is traumatizing. Like, definitionally. I'm sorry. Okay. So, I've finished breakfast, and I think it's time for me to get on with the rest of my day. I hope you have a very lovely day, friends. Thank you, Jada. I'll see you some other time. Farewell.